The effect of Mary Queen of Scots on Elizabeth's reign cannot be overestimated. Elizabeth was trying to straddle, as it were, the Roman Catholic and the Protestant faiths. She was a Protestant and she wanted to maintain Protestant theology, but she wanted to try and establish a middle way, and she didn't want to have a window into people's souls. Sadly, that attempt didn't succeed because of events. Firstly, the arrival of Mary Queen of Scots destabilised everything. She was an heir to the throne, Elizabeth had no children, and she was a Roman Catholic. She had escaped from a very difficult political situation in Scotland, and Elizabeth put her under house arrest in about 1569. Then there was the Northern Rebellion once she arrived, an attempt by the Duke of Norfolk to regain power in the Privy Council. That failed, and the Duke of Norfolk was put into prison. But at this point, Elizabeth was prepared to be reasonably magnanimous towards him and allowed him to be released from prison. However, the following year, in 1570, there was the excommunication of Elizabeth by the Pope. And that again changed things. It meant that Elizabeth was very open to treason in her own country, and as a result, things went from bad to worse. There was a attempt, it was the Ridolfi plot to bring Spanish troops into this country in 1571 to replace Elizabeth with Mary, who would marry the Duke of Norfolk. Well, you can imagine the outcome of all this was the execution of the Duke of Norfolk. Elizabeth was unwilling to execute Mary. She had various reasons for that. I think maybe because she did not want to have the idea that monarchs could be executed. She didn't want to execute her own relative, and she also saw the political consequences of that could be a war with Spain. At that point, England was no way prepared to fight a war with Spain. Also potentially a war with France. So, the repression of the Catholics increases dramatically after these events. Suddenly, the Catholics are seen as a real threat to Elizabeth, and sadly for the Catholic community in this country, there was a significant increase in the laws against them. There were two more threats, the Throckmorton plot in 1583, followed by the Babington plot in 1586. And the Babington plot was the final straw. It was felt impossible to keep Mary alive because she was involved in these plots, and particularly the Babington plot. Walsingham's spy network had been very effective in uncovering the Ridolfi plot, the Throckmorton plot, and the Babington plot. And so Mary was executed. Elizabeth said that she didn't want that to happen. The jury's out as to whether this is for public consumption for the European monarchs, but whatever. As Elizabeth feared, the result of the execution of Mary was going to be the involvement of Spain in war against England, which results in the Spanish Armada. So you can see that the arrival of Mary is one of those events in history that really makes life awkward for another person, in this case Elizabeth. I don't think Mary intended to be awkward, but that's how history works out. And for the Roman Catholics in England, it was not good news. It meant that they were increasingly feeling the repression of laws against them. And I think this is one of the reasons why it's hard to stand in judgment on the past. And as Christians, we ought to realise that the business of government is difficult. And you may stand and think, oh, this is bad, or this is bad. You have to get into the actual almost existential threats that are often posed to realise that this is how things are.